The rain was relentless, hammering the streets of Brooklyn like a drumbeat of fate, and I was already late. I sprinted through the downpour, my sneakers slapping puddles, heart pounding not just from the run, but from the text that had buzzed my phone an hour ago. Elliot, I need your help. It's about love. Those words from Caleb, my best friend since we were kids stealing comics from each other's backpacks, hit like a lightning bolt. I burst into the cafe, dripping wet, and spotted him in the corner, his blonde hair catching the dim light like a halo. Caleb looked nervous, his fingers tapping a frantic rhythm on the table. "You're soaked," he said, tossing me a napkin with that lopsided grin I'd memorized over years. But his eyes were different tonight, wild, like he was standing on the edge of something huge. "What's the emergency?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from him. My voice was teasing, but my chest tightened. Caleb wasn't the type to throw around words like love. He was the guy who'd once convinced me to sneak into a midnight movie screening, only to fall asleep halfway through, snoring loud enough to get us kicked out. Love. That was new territory. He leaned forward, voice low. "I'm in love, Elliot. Like, stupid in love." His name's Julian. My heart did a weird flip, not because of the confession, but because of the way Caleb's face lit up when he said Julian. I'd never seen him like that, not in all our years of late-night talks and dumb bets. He's in my art history class at NYU. He's incredible, smart, funny, and God, those eyes. I'm a mess. I laughed, trying to ignore the strange pang in my chest. "Okay, Romeo, so what's the plan? You gonna serenade him or what?" "That's where you come in," Caleb said, his grin turning sheepish. "You're good with words, man. You write those poems for your lit class that make people cry. I need you to help me. Woo him. Write him a letter. Maybe. Something to make him notice me." The air in the cafe felt heavier, like the rain had followed me inside. I forced a smile. "You want me to be your wingman? For some guy named Julian?" My voice was light, but my mind was racing. Caleb, my Caleb, was asking me to help him chase someone else. And I'd do it because that's what best friends do, right? Even if it felt like swallowing glass. Over the next week, I threw myself into Project Julian. Caleb dragged me to the NYU library, where we'd casually bump into Julian, a lanky guy with dark curls and a smile that could probably stop traffic. He was charming, I'd give him that, but there was something guarded about him, like he was always holding back. Caleb, though, was all in. He'd ramble about Julian's laugh, the way he sketched in the margins of his notes, how he'd quoted Frida Kahlo like it was no big deal. Every word Caleb spoke about him carved a little deeper into me, though I couldn't figure out why. I wrote the letter, poured my heart into it. Actually ironic, considering it wasn't my heart on the line. "Dear Julian," it began, "there's someone who sees you, really sees you, in a world that often looks away." I wove in metaphors about art and light, crafting something that screamed Caleb's earnestness. When I handed it to him, he read it with wide eyes. "Elliot, this is perfect. How do you do this?" I shrugged, ignoring the ache. "Just good at faking it, I guess." He didn't give Julian the letter right away. Instead, he kept coming to me for more ideas for dates, lines to say, even what to wear. "You're like my love coach," he joked one night as we sat on my apartment's fire escape, the city buzzing below us. The stars were hidden by clouds, but Caleb's face was bright enough to make up for it. I wanted to hate Julian for stealing that light, but I couldn't. Not when Caleb looked so alive. Days turned into weeks, and I became Caleb's shadow in his pursuit. We'd stake out Julian's favorite coffee shop, where I'd whisper tips in Caleb's ear, make him laugh, ask about his art. I watched Caleb stumble through flirty banter, his cheeks pink, and Julian's slow, curious smiles in return. It was working. Julian was warming up to him. But every time Caleb thanked me, every time he hugged me and said, "I couldn't do this without you," something inside me twisted. One night, after another strategy session at the cafe, Caleb grabbed my hand as we walked through Prospect Park. The air was crisp, the leaves crunching under our feet. "You're the best, Elliot," he said, his voice soft. "I don't know what I'd do without you." His hand lingered in mine, warm and steady, and for a moment, the world felt too small, too full of him. I pulled away, laughing it off, but my heart was screaming. I didn't realize it then, but I was falling. Not for Julian, for Caleb. The guy I'd known forever, the one who'd always been there, was suddenly someone I couldn't stop thinking about. And the worst part, I was helping him love someone else. The realization hit me like a subway train at full speed. I was in love with Caleb. Not the kind of love you have for a best friend, but the kind that makes your chest ache when they smile at someone else. And here I was, playing Cupid for him and Julian, every step pulling me deeper into a mess I didn't know how to escape. Caleb didn't notice. He was too caught up in his whirlwind crush, texting me at all hours with updates. Julian said my laugh is cute. Or he invited me to an art gallery opening. I'd reply with enthusiasm, hiding the way my stomach churned. I kept up the act, writing more notes for him to slip into Julian's sketchbook, suggesting romantic spots in the city, even helping him pick out a leather jacket that made him look like he'd stepped out of a rom-com. But every time I saw them together, laughing over coffee or brushing shoulders at a gallery, it felt like I was fading into the background. One evening, Caleb showed up at my apartment unannounced, his face flushed with excitement. "Elliot, you're a genius," he said, bursting through the door. "That note you wrote, the one about colors and inspiration. Julian loved it. He wants to hang out this weekend, just the two of us." I forced a grin, my heart sinking. "That's awesome, man. Told you it'd work." He flopped onto my couch, kicking off his shoes. "You're like magic." I was so nervous, "But you make it easy. I owe you big time." His eyes met mine, and for a split second, I thought I saw something that wasn't just gratitude. But then he looked away, pulling out his phone to show me a photo of Julian's latest sketch. I swallowed hard, nodding along, pretending I cared about the shading or whatever. The truth was, I was drowning. I started avoiding Caleb's texts, claiming I was swamped with schoolwork. But he'd show up anyway, dragging me to diners or dragging me into his plans. "You're my good luck charm," he'd say, and I'd laugh, but it hurt. I started noticing things I hadn't before: the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, how his voice softened when he talked about something serious. Every moment with him was a reminder of what I couldn't have. One night, everything changed. We were at a rooftop party in Manhattan, the skyline glittering like a promise. Julian was there, chatting with some artsy types, and Caleb was a nervous wreck. "What do I say to him tonight?" he whispered, grabbing my arm. His touch sent a jolt through me, and I couldn't take it anymore. "Caleb, you don't need me," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "You've got this. Just be yourself." He frowned, stepping closer. "What's wrong? You've been weird lately." I looked away, the city lights blurring. "I'm fine. Just tired." "Bullshit," he said, his voice low but firm. "Talk to me, Elliot. You're my best friend." That word friend felt like a knife. I wanted to scream that I wasn't just his friend, that I was in love with him, that every word I'd written for Julian was really about him. But I couldn't. Not when he was so close to getting what he wanted. Instead, I mumbled, "I'm good. Go talk to Julian." I turned away, heading for the edge of the roof, needing air. Caleb didn't follow, and when I glanced back, he was laughing with Julian, his hand on Julian's shoulder. I felt like I was losing him. The next week was torture. Caleb and Julian were officially dating, and I was the third wheel who'd made it all happen. I threw myself into distractions late nights at the library, writing poems I'd never show anyone. But Caleb kept pulling me back. He'd call me at midnight, voice soft, saying, "I miss hanging out with just you." I didn't know what to make of it. Was he just being Caleb, the guy who'd always needed me? Or was there something else? Then came the night that broke me open. Caleb showed up at my place, soaked from a sudden storm, his eyes red like he'd been crying. "Julian broke up with me," he said, his voice cracking. "He said I'm too intense, that I'm not what he's looking for." I pulled him inside, my heart racing. "I'm sorry," I said, handing him a towel. "You're amazing, Caleb." He's an idiot if he can't see that. Caleb looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "You really think that?" I froze. The truth was clawing its way out, but I couldn't let it. "Not now." "Yeah," I said softly. "I do." He stepped closer, the towel forgotten in his hand. "Elliot, why do you always know what to say?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because if I opened my mouth, I'd tell him everything. The silence between us was deafening, rain pounding against the windows like it was trying to break in. Caleb stood there, inches away, his eyes locked on mine. I wanted to tell him everything, that I'd been in love with him for weeks, maybe longer, that every word I'd written for Julian was a piece of my heart I'd given to him instead. But I was terrified. What if I ruined us? "I don't get it," Caleb said finally, his voice raw. "I did everything right. The letters, the dates, it was perfect. Why wasn't it enough?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Sometimes it's not about doing everything right. Sometimes it's just not the right fit. He laughed, bitter. "Yeah, well, I'm starting to think I'm nobody's fit." He sank onto my couch, head in his hands. "I thought Julian was it. You know. Like, the one." I sat beside him, close but not too close. "You'll find someone," I said, hating how hollow it sounded. "Someone who sees you for you." He looked up, his eyes glassy. "You always see me, Elliot. Even when I'm a mess." My heart stopped. For a moment, I thought he could see the truth written all over my face. But then he smiled, that same lopsided grin, and said, "You're the best friend I've ever had." Friend. There it was again. I nodded, forcing a smile, and changed the subject. We talked for hours that night, about everything and nothing, old memories, dumb pranks, the time we got lost in Central Park and ended up at a street performers show. By the time he left, the rain had stopped, and I felt like I could breathe again. But the ache in my chest didn't go away. Over the next few weeks, Caleb leaned on me more than ever. He was heartbroken, but he was still Caleb funny, warm, always dragging me into some new adventure. We'd spend evenings wandering the city, grabbing pizza at 2 a.m., or sitting on my fire escape, sharing a blanket against the October chill. He didn't talk about Julian anymore, but I could feel the shift. He'd look at me longer, hold my gaze a little too intently. Once, when we were laughing over some dumb joke, his hand brushed mine, and he didn't pull away. I started to hope. Maybe it was stupid, but I couldn't help it. The way he'd text me just to say goodnight. The way he'd show up with coffee because I was in the neighborhood, it felt different. Like maybe he was seeing me. Really seeing me. For the first time. One night, we ended up at Coney Island. The boardwalk quiet in the off-season. The lights from the Ferris wheel painted the sky in soft pinks and blues. And Caleb was quieter than usual. We sat on a bench, the ocean whispering in the distance. And he turned to me. Elliot, can I ask you something? My heart raced. Sure. Have you ever been in love? Like, really in love? I froze. The truth was burning in my throat, but I couldn't say it. Not yet. Yeah, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. It's complicated. He nodded, like he understood. It's scary, right? Like, you want to tell them, but what if it changes everything? I looked at him, my chest tight. Yeah, exactly. He didn't say anything for a long time, just stared out at the water. Then he turned to me, his eyes soft but intense. You're the only person I can talk to like this. You know. The only one who gets me. I wanted to kiss him. Right there, with the waves crashing and the lights flickering. I wanted to close the distance between us. But I didn't. I just nodded, my heart breaking and healing all at once. The next day, Caleb texted me, meet me at the cafe. I need to tell you something. My stomach flipped. Was this it? Was he going to say what I'd been too scared to say? I got there early, my hands shaking as I sipped my coffee. When Caleb walked in, he looked different, nervous, but not in the way he'd been with Julian. This was something else. Elliot, he said, sitting down, his voice steady but quiet. I've been thinking a lot. About us. My breath caught. Us. He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. I don't know when it happened, but you're not just my best friend. You're more. And I think I know I am falling for you. The world stopped. Caleb's words hung in the air, each one a spark that set my heart ablaze. He was falling for me. Me, Elliot, the guy who'd spent weeks orchestrating his love story with someone else, only to realize I was writing my own all along. I stared at him, my coffee forgotten, my pulse hammering. Caleb, my voice cracked, and I laughed, nervous and giddy. You have no idea how long I've wanted to hear that. His eyes widened, a slow smile spreading across his face. Wait. You mean, you feel it too? I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. I've been in love with you for months. Every letter I wrote for Julian, every word, it was for you. I just didn't know how to say it. Caleb laughed, a sound so full of relief and joy it made my chest ache. He reached across the table, his hand finding mine, and this time, neither of us pulled away. I'm such an idiot, he said, shaking his head. I was chasing Julian, and the whole time, the person I really wanted was right in front of me. The cafe faded away, the clink of cups, the hum of voices, the rain tapping the windows. It was just us, two idiots who'd taken the long way to find each other. I squeezed his hand, my heart so full it hurt. So what now? I asked, half teasing, half terrified. Now. Caleb's grin was pure mischief, the same one he'd worn when we were kids plotting some grand adventure. Now we figure out what it looks like. What followed was a blur of moments I'd never forget. Our first kiss, tentative and sweet, under a streetlight in Greenwich Village, the rain making everything shimmer. Late nights talking about everything, our fears, our dreams, the way we'd both been too scared to admit what we felt. Caleb wasn't perfect. He was stubborn and impulsive, and sometimes he'd forget to text back for hours. But he was mine, and I was his, and that was enough. It wasn't all easy. Coming out to our friends, our family visit was messy. My mom cried, not because she didn't accept me, but because she wished I'd told her sooner. Caleb's dad took longer, his silence heavy, but he came around, showing up one day with a shy smile and a hug. The world wasn't always kind, either. We'd get looks sometimes, holding hands in the subway or kissing in a park. But every time Caleb's fingers intertwined with mine, it felt like we could take on anything. One night, months later, we sat on my fire escape, the city sprawling below us. Caleb had his arm around me, his chin resting on my shoulder. "You know," he said, his voice soft, "I thought love was supposed to be this big, dramatic thing, like in the movies. But with you, it's quiet. It's home." I turned to him, my heart swelling. "You're my home, too." He kissed me then, slow and sure, and I knew this was a kind of love that didn't need grand gestures or perfect plans. It was the love we'd stumbled into, the one we'd built together, step by step, mistake by mistake. Looking back, I think about the letters I wrote for Julian, the ones that brought Caleb and me here. They were never really for Julian, not deep down. They were my heart, spilling onto the page, waiting for Caleb to read between the lines. And somehow, against all odds, he did. We weren't just a story anymore. We were real, flawed, and beautiful. And as we sat there, the city lights flickering like stars, I knew we'd keep writing our story together, one messy, perfect page at a time.